So, you're one of the special girls for... After the party, the question came out of Bryce Langford's mouth with a smug smile as Celeste Moore knelt on the marble floor of the grand ballroom, cleaning up a spill of spilled wine. Diana looked up slowly, her 26 years of life having taught her to recognize that tone instantly. Around her, Manhattan's most exclusive charity event was in full swing, with billionaire businessmen celebrating another night of charity that cost more than many families' annual salaries. Bryce Langford, CEO of Hartford Industries and heir to a $400 million, 0 cents, fortune, leaned slightly toward her, his impeccable tuxedo and $200,000 0 cents watch contrasted starkly with the simple cleaning uniform Diana wore at 42. William had inherited not only the family business, but also the arrogance that had been passed down from generation to generation. "I'm sorry, sir, but I'm a member of the cleaning staff," Diana replied, keeping her voice steady despite her heart racing with indignation. She knew that look, the same one she had seen since she was a child, growing up in the Bronx housing projects where people like William saw her only as an object or a servant. "Oh, of course you are." William laughed, lowering his voice even more and approaching her intimidatingly. "I like that discreet approach. Very professional." The people at the organization said there would be special entertainment after the official event. "How much do you charge for the whole night?" The ballroom continued its dance of hypocrisy around them. Baccarat crystals reflected the lights of the chandeliers as New York elite pretended to care about social causes, drinking champagne that cost more than Diana's monthly rent. No one paid any real attention to the scene unfolding before them. A black woman being humiliated was just an invisible part of the landscape to these people. The silence that followed was like a slap in Diana's face. Around her, other guests began to pay attention to the scene, some hiding malicious smiles, others simply ignoring it as if it were a natural part of that world of privilege. A senator's wife whispered something in her friend's ear, both laughing discreetly as they watched. Celeste Moore had grown up as the only black student in many of her classes. After winning a scholarship, she graduated from Columbia University with a degree in business administration while working 3 jobs, including cleaning offices at night. Every degree, every achievement, every barrier broken, and yet here she was, reduced to a sex object by a man who had probably inherited more money than she would ever see in her lifetime. "Mr. Hartford," she said, standing up slowly and looking him straight in the eye, "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. I'm an employee hired to keep this event clean and organized. Nothing more." William's response was even more humiliating. He took a $100 0 cents bill out of his pocket and held it out to her, making sure other guests nearby saw the gesture for the embarrassment. "Sweetheart, and when you change your mind about the extra services, look me up. I have a suite at the Pierre Hotel. $300 an hour would be a fair price." A group of executives nearby began to laugh openly. "Typical William," one of them commented. "Always to the point." Another added, "At least he's generous." The laughter echoed like knives in Dinah's pride. But something interesting happened at that moment. Instead of lowering her head or running away in humiliation, Diana stood tall, her eyes fixed on William with an intensity that made him feel inexplicably uncomfortable. There was something about that look that didn't fit a simple cleaning lady, a sharp intelligence, an unshakable dignity. "Thank you for the offer, Mr. Hartford," she said with disturbing calm. "But I have principles that money cannot buy." Her voice carried an educated accent, too refined for someone who should be mopping floors. William frowned, momentarily confused. There was something wrong with that answer, with her posture, with the way she looked at him, without fear or submission. Women in her position usually humbled themselves further or burst into tears. This one seemed different. What Bryce Langford couldn't imagine was that the woman he had just humiliated wasn't just another cleaning lady trying to get by. Celeste Moore had 2 college degrees, spoke 4 languages fluently, and, more importantly, carried something in her purse that would soon become the arrogant millionaire's worst nightmare. As he walked away laughing with his friends, making jokes about helping the community in creative ways. Diana stood motionless for a moment. The $100.00 bill still extended toward him like a final insult, but her eyes showed no defeat. They shone with a determination that only exists in those who have weathered far worse storms and learned not only to survive, but to thrive. There in the center of that gilded hall, filled with people who saw her as invisible, Diana maintained her composure like someone guarding a secret too powerful to be revealed before the time was right. What those privileged people didn't know was that every humiliating word, every cruel laugh, every condescending look was being carefully filed away in the mind of someone who would turn her apparent vulnerability into the most devastating weapon they had ever faced. If this story of prejudice and intelligent revenge has piqued your curiosity, be sure to subscribe to the channel to find out how a single humiliation would become the catalyst for a fall that would echo throughout Manhattan's elite in the days following the event. Diana's humiliation spread through Manhattan's social circles like wildfire. Bryce Langford had turned the incident into an anecdote for his exclusive dinner parties, telling anyone who would listen about the cleaning lady who played hard to get and how he had put her in her place. You should have seen her face when I offer her the $100.00. William laughed during lunch at the Hartford's private club, gesturing with his 1,000 wine glass. These people always pretend to have morals until they see the money on the table. Diana, meanwhile, had returned to her modest apartment in the Bronx, carrying much more than the humiliation of that night. There was something about William's arrogance, the way he had treated her like a commodity, that had awakened memories she preferred to keep buried at 16. Diana had witnessed her mother being humiliated in a similar way by the boss of the house where she worked as a maid. The man had offered her extra work in exchange for sexual favors, and when she refused, she was fired on false charges of theft. The family lost their home, and Diana vowed that day that she would never allow anyone to reduce her to an object again. But what angered her most was not just what William had done to her. It was knowing that he probably did this regularly, protected by his wealth, and social standing. Men like him operated with total impunity, certain that their victims would never have the resources to confront them. What Bryce Langford didn't know was that Celeste Moore wasn't just a cleaning lady working to get by during the day. She operated under another name, DJ Consulting, a corporate auditing firm specializing in uncovering financial and labor irregularities. Her clients paid her handsomely for her ability to find evidence that lawyers and private investigators often missed. Diana had built her company slowly, using her ordinary appearance and humble background as the perfect cover. Powerful executives often spoke freely in front of her, assuming that a black woman from the suburbs couldn't understand their complex transactions or pose any real threat. 3 days after the event, Diana received a phone call that made her blood boil even more. It was Jennifer, her supervisor at the cleaning company, with devastating news. "Diana, I'm sorry, but I can no longer book you for corporate events," Jennifer said, clearly uncomfortable. "I got a call from the Hartford office. They said you were inappropriate and specifically asked that you be removed from the list of approved employees for..." high-profile events. The silence that followed was deafening. William hadn't been content with just humiliating her publicly. Now he was attacking her source of income, using his influence to undermine her livelihood. It was a calculated, cruel move designed to teach a lesson to any woman who dared reject him. "Did he say anything else?" Diana asked, her voice dangerously calm. "Well," Jennifer hesitated, "he suggested that you might want to reconsider your professional priorities and that there were other services you could offer if you wanted to continue working in elite events." The implication was clear and repugnant. William was essentially trying to force her into prostitution through economic blackmail, using his power to cut off her opportunities for legitimate work. In that moment, something changed in Diana, the girl who had grown up watching her mother be humiliated, who had studied at 16 while holding down 3 jobs, who had built a career from scratch while facing daily prejudice. That woman was not going to bow down to a spoiled playboy who believed that money could buy anything. Diana hung up the phone and walked to her makeshift office in her bedroom. There, in 202 organized boxes, were the files of every case she had solved in the last 5 years. Corrupt businessmen exposed tax schemes, uncovered sexual harassment, documented each case represented a victory for justice over the impunity of the powerful. But this case would be different. This one would be personal. She opened her laptop and began researching Bryce Langford, 3 Hartford Industries financial history, previous litigation, corporate ties. Each click revealed more information, and Diana began to smile for the first time since that humiliating night. There were interesting things buried in the public records of Hartford Industries. Very interesting. Questionable transactions, suspicious partnerships, and, most importantly, a pattern of behavior that suggested Bryce Langford had far more secrets than just his public arrogance. What that privileged millionaire didn't know was that every cruel word, every move to destroy her professional reputation was only fueling the determination of someone who would turn her apparent vulnerability into the most devastating weapon he had ever faced. Diana wasn't just a victim seeking revenge. She was a highly trained predator who had just found her perfect prey. While Bryce Langford slept peacefully in his mansion, convinced he had solved the problem of the insolent cleaning lady, Diana worked through the night, her fingers flying over the keyboard, meticulously building the case that would destroy not only his reputation, but the entire foundation of power upon which his privileged life was built. What those privileged people didn't know was that every act of contempt was writing their own sentence of defeat, and Celeste Moore was about to become the judge, jury, and executioner of a justice Bryce Langford would never see coming over the next 2 weeks. Bryce Langford continued his vicious campaign against Diana. Not content with merely ruining her opportunities at the cleaning company, he used his influence to spread malicious rumors throughout Manhattan's social circles. "I hear that cleaning lady is trying to sue William," Patricia Westfield commented during a charity dinner at the Plaza Hotel. "How pathetic. She's clearly after easy money." "Typical," replied Margaret Harrison, adjusting her $100.00 pearls. "These people always try to take advantage of successful men. Fortunately, William has the resources to defend himself." What they didn't know was that Diana was sitting just 10 Fs away from them, dressed as a temporary waitress, serving champagne and collecting every poisonous word that came out of their privileged mouths. Every insult was carefully memorized, every name mentally noted. Diana had gotten the job through a different agency using a fake name. Her strategy was simple: infiltrate events where William and his friends gathered, becoming invisible again to gather information that could be useful. It was during one of these events that she met Andre Callahan, a 45-year-old black lawyer who had built his career defending victims of corporate discrimination. Marcus was at the event as a guest, but Diana recognized him immediately. She had read about his famous cases against powerful executives. "Excuse me," Diana said, approaching him discreetly during a break. "I need to talk to you about something important." Marcus looked at her closely. There was something about the young waitress's demeanor that didn't match her apparent role. "I'm listening." "Not here," Diana whispered, discreetly handing him a business card. "Call this number tomorrow. It's about Bryce Langford and a pattern of behavior that needs to be exposed." That same night, William did something that would seal his fate. He posted a photo of the event on his social media with a caption, "Excellent charity dinner tonight. I love how our city manages to keep certain people in their place. The natural order of things always prevails." The post received hundreds of likes from his elite friends, but for Diana, it was the final piece of evidence she needed. William's arrogance had reached the point where he was publicly documenting his prejudiced mindset. The next day, Marcus called Diana as agreed. They met at a discreet cafe in the Bronx, far from the prying eyes of Manhattan. "Tell me everything," Marcus said, turning on his recorder, with Diana's permission for 2 hours. Diana recounted every detail of the humiliation in the grand ballroom, the attempts to sabotage her career, and most importantly, she revealed her true identity as a corporate audit consultant. "I've documented everything," Anna said, showing Marcus a folder filled with evidence, social media printouts, recordings of conversations where he admits to intentionally undermining me, testimonials from other employees who witnessed the initial humiliation. Marcus flipped through the documents, his interest growing with each page. "This is substantial, Diana, very substantial. But you said there's more." Diana smiled for the first time in weeks. "During my investigations into Hartford Industries, I uncovered some interesting irregularities, suspicious government contracts, underbilling, and most importantly, a pattern of discrimination against minority employees that dates back 10 years. Are you telling me you have evidence of systematic discrimination?" "I'm telling you, I have enough evidence to not only sue Bryce Langford for harassment and retaliation, but to open a full federal investigation into his business practices," Diana replied, pulling a flash drive from her pocket. "It's all here: financial documents, internal emails, buried audit reports." Marcus leaned back in his chair, impressed. "How did you get access to all this?" "Let's just say that when you're consistently underestimated, people tend to leave important information exposed," Diana said with a cryptic smile. "Powerful executives rarely imagine that the simple cleaning lady has a background in financial analysis and connections in corporate auditing. Meanwhile, Bryce Langford went about his normal life completely oblivious to the storm brewing that same afternoon. He posted another arrogant comment on his social media about maintaining quality standards at his company, unaware that every word was being carefully documented. "He has no idea what's coming," Marcus said, closing the folder containing the evidence. "Diana, what you've built here isn't just a case of individual discrimination. It's a bomb that could bring down the entire corrupt structure he represents." Diana nodded, her eyes shining with a determination that only exists in those who have turned pain into purpose. "Marcus, I grew up watching my mother being humiliated by men like Bryce Langford. I swore that when I had the power to fight back, I wouldn't let any opportunity for justice slip through my fingers." "So you're prepared for war?" Marcus asked, extending his hand. "I was born prepared," Diana replied, shaking his hand firmly. What Bryce Langford couldn't imagine was that his constant arrogance and complete underestimation of Diana had created the perfect conditions for his own destruction. Every social media post, every cruel comment, every attempt at sabotage was being meticulously documented by someone who not only had the skills to take him down, but also the strategic patience to wait for the exact moment to strike, while William slept peacefully in his mansion, convinced that he had solved the problem of the insolent cleaning lady once and for all. Diana and Marcus worked through the night building a case that would not only destroy his reputation, but expose the entire network of privilege and corruption upon which his life was built. For a moment, when William published that last arrogant post, all his followers laughed and agreed with his comments about natural order. But those who know the true power of justice know that it grows precisely in silence, fueled by the patience of those who know how to wait for the right moment. To completely rewrite the rules of the game, the first crack in Bryce Langford's confidence appeared on a seemingly normal Monday. He was in his executive office reviewing contracts when his assistant Jessica entered looking visibly nervous. "Mr. Hartford, there are some reporters in the lobby. They say they want comment on a story that's coming out tonight on CBS Investigative." William frowned. "About what?" "Something about discriminatory practices at Hartford Industries and a federal lawsuit that was filed yesterday." William's blood ran cold. What federal lawsuit before? Jessica could answer his phone. Rang. It was his personal attorney, Richard Kellerman, with a voice he had never heard before. Pure panic. "William, we need to talk immediately. The Equal Employment Commission has just opened a formal investigation against Hartford Industries. They have documents, recordings, evidence going back 10 years, and there's more. There are also allegations of sexual harassment and retaliation." "What the hell are you talking about, Richard? Against whom?" "A woman named Celeste Moore and—" "William, she's not just a cleaning lady like you thought. She's a corporate audit consultant with a degree from Columbia. You've messed with the wrong person." William felt the floor disappeared beneath his feet. Celeste Moore, the cleaning lady he had humiliated, whose life he had tried to destroy for pure amusement, was not who he thought she was. "That's impossible." "I saw her cleaning floors, William. She's documented everything, every conversation, every social media post, every attempt you made to sabotage her professionally. What's more, she's found financial irregularities at the company, overpriced contracts, bribery of government officials, systematic discrimination against minority employees at that." Moment William received a notification on his cell phone. It was a link to Twitter. With trembling hands, he clicked and saw his worst nightmare materializing in real time. The Hartford Exposed was among the most talked about topics. Screenshots of his arrogant messages, recordings of conversations where he admitted to sabotaging Diana to teach her a lesson, videos of employees reporting years of discrimination at the company. But what destroyed him completely was seeing the video Diana had secretly recorded during the charity. The event there, he was clearly audible, offering money for sexual services and making degrading comments about keeping certain people in their place. The video already had 2 million views and was being shared by celebrities, politicians, and rights activists. William frantically called Andre Callahan, the lawyer who had appeared alongside Diana at the press conference that was now being broadcast live on CNN. "Dr. Thompson, we need to talk. I can explain everything. It was a misunderstanding, Mr. Hartford." Marcus's voice was ice cold. "My client has no interest in negotiating with you this afternoon. We will be filing a $50 million physical sense lawsuit for emotional distress defamation and retaliation. And that's just the beginning. 50 million. That's ridiculous. Ridiculous is you using your position to try to force a woman into prostitution through economic blackmail. Ridiculous is you posting publicly about keeping people in their place. Ridiculous is you underestimating someone who has more integrity and intelligence in one finger than you have in your entire privileged body. While William tried to process the magnitude of his downfall, Diana appeared on television, giving a live interview to Anderson Cooper. She was flawless, eloquent, dignified, devastatingly intelligent. "Mr. Cooper, I grew up watching my mother be humiliated by men like Bryce Langford. Men who believe that money buys them the right to treat other human beings like objects. I have built my career helping to expose this kind of corruption, because I believe that no one is above justice." "What would you say to Mr. Hertford now?" Diana looked directly into the camera, her eyes shining with a strength that transcended any personal vengeance. "I would say that every person he humiliated, every employee he discriminated against, every woman he objectified, now has a voice, and that voice will no longer be silenced by money or intimidation." Meanwhile, William's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Investors were canceling contracts, business partners were cutting ties, and high society friends were avoiding his calls. In a matter of hours, his carefully constructed empire was crumbling, live on national television. Patricia Westfield, who had laughed at Diana's attempt to extort money from William, now appeared on another channel, publicly distancing herself. "I always knew there was something wrong with Bryce Langford. We in society do not tolerate that kind of behavior." The hypocrisy was so latent that even William in his despair recognized the bitter irony. The final blow came when Diana published a document she had found during her investigations, an internal Hartford Industries memo instructing supervisors to find creative reasons to fire minority employees who did not fit into the company culture. The evidence was signed by Bryce Langford himself. As the revelations piled up and the masks came off, one question echoed across every news channel. How had such a powerful man so underestimated a woman who was now rewriting not only her own story, but exposing an entire network of privilege and corruption that had operated in the shadows of American high society for decades? 6 months after the devastating exposé, Celeste Moore's life had been turned upside down. The young woman who had once been humiliated for cleaning marble floors now walked the halls of DJ Consulting and Associates, her own corporate auditing firm that had become the most respected in New York. "M.S. Johnson, we have 3 new companies requesting our services this week," he announced, her assistant Thomas handing her a folder with contracts. All of them specifically cited the Hartford case as the reason for seeking us out. Diana smiled, looking out the panoramic window of her office in downtown Manhattan. Ironic how that humiliation had become her best advertisement. Companies now paid substantial sums to ensure they didn't have Hartford problems buried in their operations. The lawsuit against William had resulted in a landslide victory, $50 million, 0 cents in damages, but more importantly, a fundamental change in federal labor laws. The Hartford Act now protected employees from retaliation for discrimination, and Diana had become the national face of that fight. Bryce Langford, meanwhile, had lost everything. Hartford Industries was sold to pay fines and damages. His $400 million fortune evaporated in lawsuits and settlements. He now lived in a modest apartment in Queens, working as a freelance consultant, when he could find clients willing to overlook his ruined reputation. "Did you see the news about William today?" asked Andre Callahan, visiting Diana's office that afternoon. Diana shook her head. She had stopped following the free fall of her former tormentor months ago. Revenge had been complete, and now she was focused on building something bigger. He tried to run for a seat on the board of the small business where he works. He was unanimously rejected. The employees, mostly women and people of color, organized against his nomination. The irony was perfect. The man who once spoke of keeping people in their place was now discovering where his place really was, in a society that finally saw his true nature. Patricia Westfield and Margaret Harrison, who had laughed at Diana's efforts, now competed to publicly associate themselves with the causes she championed. "We have always supported diversity," they declared in interviews, desperately trying to rewrite their own history. The most touching transformation came from Jennifer, the supervisor at the cleaning company, who had been forced to fire Diana. She showed up at the office one afternoon with tears in her eyes. "Diana, I want to apologize. I knew it was wrong when I fired you, but I was afraid of losing my job. Seeing your courage inspired me to report other cases of discrimination at the company." Diana gave her a genuine hug. "Jennifer, you don't have to apologize. Doing the right thing when it's convenient is easy. Doing it when it's dangerous, that's what defines character." The most rewarding moment came when Diana received an invitation to speak at Colia Business School. She stood in the same auditorium where years earlier she had cleaned the bathrooms to pay for her education. "Young people," she said to an audience of future executives, "learn a simple lesson. Underestimating someone based on her appearance, background, or current role is the most expensive mistake you can make. The person you despise today may be the one who decides your fate tomorrow in the front row." A young black man raised his hand. "Miss Johnson, how did you maintain your dignity through all that humiliation?" Diana smiled, remembering the girl who grew up watching her mother being disrespected. "Because I understood something fundamental. Humiliation only works if you accept the definition others give you. I always knew who I was, regardless of where I was working or how I was treated." After the lecture, Diana walked through the streets of Manhattan, passing in front of the hotel where it began. The grand ballroom was now closed for renovation, a renovation that, according to rumors, would include a memorial to victims of workplace discrimination. That night, in her elegant Upper East Side apartment, Diana reflected on her journey. She had started by cleaning wine stains off marble floors and ended up cleaning the dirt out of the American corporate system. The best revenge she had discovered was not to destroy Bryce Langford. It was to build a legacy he could never touch or taint. It was to prove that a black woman from the Bronx could rewrite the rules of Wall Street and inspire an entire generation to never accept less than they deserved. Bryce Langford tried to humiliate Celeste Moore, to put her in her place. What he didn't know was that her place had always been at the top, and that his arrogance would only speed up her journey there. Sometimes, the worst moments of our lives are just the universe preparing us for our greatest victory. If this story of transformation and justice touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that in the end, integrity always beats cruelty, and that the greatest power doesn't come from money, but from the courage to never bow down to injustice. This